Have you ever felt like you're not being told the whole truth, especially when it comes to your health? The thing you thought you were in control of until suddenly you're not. There's a quiet belief that runs through American society. The older you get, the weaker your kidneys get. That's just natural. But the real problem is whether that belief is wrong. It's that it stops you from asking questions. During your regular checkups, has anyone ever told you that your kidneys are under stress? No symptoms, no clear warning signs. Then out of nowhere, the doctor brings up dialysis, and you're left stunned, wondering, why didn't I know sooner? Here's the truth. Most Americans over 60 only find out they have kidney issues when it's already too late. No pain, no alerts, and by the time symptoms show up, dialysis is the only option. There's no conspiracy here, but there is a system, one that prioritizes treatment over prevention. Did you know the global dialysis industry is now worth over $100 billion? And the more people who rely on it, the more that number grows. So, if there were simple, natural ways, backed by clinical data, to help clean your kidneys, lower creatinine, and avoid dialysis, why haven't you heard about them? I'm not here to sell a miracle cure. I just want to share 8 drinks you can easily work into your daily routine. Affordable, risk-free, and most importantly, supported by real research. Number 2 on the list has even been shown to reduce kidney inflammation by over 60%. But you won't see it on any doctor's prescription pad. Where are you reading this from? How old are you? What are you doing or not doing for your kidney health? Leave a comment. We read every single one and will respond with suggestions tailored to you. Let's get started. Coming in at number 8 is a drink most people have heard of, but have never fully appreciated for its role in kidney health. Number 8, lemon water plus Himalayan pink salt. It sounds simple, but don't underestimate it. Most people think of lemon water as something you drink to kickstart your morning or to detox after a vacation. But if you're over 60 and want to prevent silent kidney damage, this is one of the most effective habits you can start right now. Why? It's all about the natural citrate found in lemon juice. This compound can bind with calcium in your urine, helping stop kidney stones from forming at the microscopic level. And that matters because the most common type of kidney stone in older adults is calcium oxalate. When your urine is too acidic or too concentrated, due to drinking too little water, eating too much salt, or mild dehydration from aging, stones form slowly, no pain, no warning until they block a passage, cause inflammation, or send you into emergency dialysis. One study published in Urology Research and Practice tracked patients with recurring kidney stones and found just drinking lemon water daily reduced stone formation risk by nearly 48% after only 6 weeks. Almost half just from one incredibly simple habit. What about the Himalayan pink salt? Adding a small pinch to your lemon water isn't just about flavor. This unrefined salt contains over 80 trace minerals, including magnesium, potassium, and calcium, which help regulate fluid balance, support electrolyte levels, and, most importantly, reduce silent metabolic acidosis in older adults. As kidney function declines, your body tends to retain a mild acidic state, forcing your kidneys to work harder to keep your blood pH stable. Drinking lemon water with pink salt helps neutralize that excess acid, relieving pressure on your nephrons, the kidney's filtering units. And unlike regular white table salt, Himalayan salt doesn't spike your blood pressure in the usual way, thanks to its unprocessed form that still contains naturally balancing minerals. How to do it? Super simple. Drink it in the morning on an empty stomach. Squeeze half a fresh lemon into about 200 ml, 7 oz of warm, not hot, water. Add a very small pinch, no more than 1/8 teaspoon of Himalayan pink salt. Stir well. Sip slowly. No sugar or honey needed. This isn't just lemon water. It's a small adjustment that helps shift your body chemistry in a way that supports kidney health. You don't have to overhaul your diet overnight. Just start with 1 glass every morning. What's next is a drink that's been used in traditional medicine for centuries, and now modern science is showing it can slow down, even stop, the formation of kidney scarring. Number 7. Barley water. Simple, classic, and incredibly effective for your kidneys. In a world flooded with modern detox products, it's almost ironic that one of the best drinks for your kidneys is a recipe that's been around for thousands of years. Barley water, long used in traditional medicine across India and the Middle East, is now resurfacing on the radar of modern science, and for good reason. If you're trying to lower creatinine levels, boost your glomerular filtration rate (GFR), prevent kidney fibrosis, then this is the drink you should be having every single day. From a biological perspective, why is barley water so effective? Barley contains a type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan, which can bind to and carry waste products like urea and creatinine out of the excretory system, reduce toxic buildup as kidney filtration starts to slow down. A study published in Renal Failure, 2020, found that people with early-stage kidney disease who drank barley water daily reduced their creatinine levels by up to 15% in just 4 weeks, while also seeing a significant improvement in GFR. But that's not all. Barley is also rich in magnesium and selenium, which help stabilize electrolyte levels. Ferulic acid, a powerful antioxidant. These compounds reduce low-grade chronic inflammation inside nephrons, the microscopic structures responsible for filtering blood in your kidneys. And if you're over 60, this matters even more. Chronic inflammation is a major trigger of kidney fibrosis, when scar tissue gradually replaces healthy cells. Once that happens, there's no turning back. Beyond its anti-inflammatory and detoxifying benefits, barley water is also a gentle natural diuretic. Unlike prescription diuretics, it helps eliminate excess sodium, flush out uric acid from your bloodstream, reduce swelling in your feet and ankles, a common early warning sign that often gets ignored. It's incredibly easy to make, no juicer or fancy equipment needed. Rinse a half cup of whole barley thoroughly. Simmer with 4 cups of water on low heat for about 30 minutes. Strain out the grains and let it cool. Drink it warm or cold. Add a splash of lemon juice to boost its kidney stone fighting effect. Drink 1-2 cups a day, especially in the afternoon, when your body needs to flush out toxins without losing morning hydration. And the best part, no side effects, no overstimulation, no impact on your blood pressure. Just a simple, time-tested remedy that's incredibly valuable if you're taking care of your kidneys every day. You've just added a natural toothbrush for your kidneys, helping sweep away waste and chronic inflammation. And now, it's time to move on to something even stronger. A dark-colored tea that's been scientifically shown to slow fibrosis and oxidative damage in just a few days. Number 6. Dandelion root tea. A humble herb with a deep impact on kidney function. If you think dandelion root is just a weed, you're not alone. But modern science is proving this overlooked root may actually be one of the strongest allies for your kidney health, especially after age 60. Why? Because it directly affects the 3 areas where aging kidneys struggle most: decreased urine output, chronic inflammation, accumulated oxidative stress. The data doesn't lie. A 2018 study published in Renal Nutrition found that dandelion root extract contains taraxasterol, chlorogenic acid. These 2 active compounds help increase natural urine production and speed up the elimination of metabolic waste like urea, creatinine, and nitrogen. In the study, drinking dandelion extract daily boosted urine output by up to 30% and significantly lowered BUN levels, a key early indicator of kidney stress. What does this mean for older adults? As you age, your kidneys gradually lose their ability to handle inflammatory compounds like uric acid, creatinine, excess proteins. The result? Silent damage builds up in the glomeruli, the tiny blood vessel networks that filter your blood. If left unchecked, oxidative stress leads to fibrosis, making the glomeruli stiff and unable to filter. That's the fast track to dialysis. The antioxidants in dandelion are a quiet shield. They help protect tiny blood vessels from free radicals, reduce inflammation inside the kidney's filtering units nephrons, maintain stable potassium levels, which is critical to balancing electrolytes, preventing muscle cramps, lowering blood pressure without dehydration. How to brew dandelion tea correctly. Use fresh chopped dandelion root or organic dried tea bags. Boil 1 teaspoon of root with 1/5 cups of water for 10 minutes. Let it steep another 5 minutes. Drink between meals once daily. Feedback from older users is crystal clear. Urine looks cleaner, less foot swelling, deeper sleep. No magic. Just your kidneys getting a break, and you can feel the difference within days. You've just reactivated your body's natural release valve. No drugs, no pressure, no potassium imbalance. Now it's time to introduce another tea. One that not only detoxifies, but may also stimulate repair of damaged kidney cells after years of overload. Number 5, nettle leaf tea. Not just detox, but deep internal renewal. You may have walked past a wild nettle bush without a second glance, but what you didn't see is this. This plant holds one of the most powerful natural kidney-supporting compounds ever studied. Nettle leaf tea isn't like those hyped-up detox teas. It's a clinically backed drink that supports your kidney's entire defense system, from blood filtration and inflammation control to repairing damaged filtering tissues. Scientific proof. Yes, and it's specific. A study published in 2014 in the Avisa Journal of Phytomedicine found that patients in early-stage kidney failure who took nettle leaf extract continuously for 8 weeks saw significant reductions in creatinine, uric acid, blood urea nitrogen bun. These 3 markers reflect how much toxic waste is lingering in your blood because your kidneys can't filter it out properly. But it doesn't stop at just flushing things out. Nettle also activates your body's own antioxidant enzymes, meaning it reduces inflammation directly inside the nephrons, protecting these filtration units before damage sets in. For people over 60, this is a major advantage. After years of filtering blood and toxins, the glomeruli, tiny filters in your kidneys, start to harden and shrink. The more fibrosis occurs, the less blood gets filtered, and the higher your risk of needing dialysis. Nettle leaves contain flavonoids, vitamin C beta-sitosterol. These compounds block inflammation-causing cytokines, which are directly responsible for speeding up fibrosis. In plain terms, nettle doesn't just put out the fire, it stops the fire from spreading. And it does one more critical thing. It acts as a gentle, natural diuretic, helping to boost urine output. Flush out uric acid, which is extremely toxic to kidneys. Reduce swelling in ankles and feet, a common but often overlooked kidney failure sign. Lower blood pressure without draining potassium, unlike synthetic diuretics. How to brew it: simple but powerful if done consistently. Use 1 teaspoon of dried nettle leaves. Steep in hot water for about 10-15 minutes. If the flavor feels a bit strong, you can add mint or chamomile. Drink twice daily, once in the morning and once before bed. Common feedback from older adults who drink this tea regularly: less bloating, lighter stomach, less fatigue upon waking, sharper mental clarity. One small but important reminder: when drinking nettle tea, make sure you're drinking enough water throughout the day, because detox only works if there's enough fluid to carry waste out. You've just reset your kidney's frontline defense, both in terms of inflammation and filtration power. Now, get ready for the next step, a drink that doesn't just detox, but has been shown to repair damage at the cellular level inside your kidneys, the damage that's been silently accumulating over time. Number 4, blueberry and parsley infused water. Simple, natural, shockingly effective. At first glance, this drink might sound like just another detox trend on social media, But don't let appearances fool you. The combination of blueberries and parsley isn't just a refreshing beverage. It's a scientifically backed formula that supports kidney function in a comprehensive way, especially valuable once you're over 60. Ingredient 1. Blueberries, antioxidant protection for kidney tubules. Blueberries contain anthocyanins, the compounds that give them their deep blue-purple color, and they're also powerful antioxidants proven to reduce cellular damage. A study published in the Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology found a diet rich in anthocyanins can reduce the risk of chronic kidney disease progression by up to 36%. Why? Because anthocyanins help calm inflammation in the kidney tubules, the structures responsible for reabsorbing nutrients and filtering out toxins. When these tubules are damaged, waste builds up, energy levels drop, and fibrosis moves in. Ingredient 2. Parsley boosts elimination and detox support. Parsley isn't just a garnish. It contains apignin, a plant-based flavonoid that's been shown to reduce kidney toxicity. This is particularly relevant for older adults who often eat salty foods, take multiple medications, have a history of high blood pressure. A 2021 study in biomedicine and pharmacotherapy showed parsley extract improved creatinine levels and reduced kidney tissue inflammation, even in models of artificially induced kidney failure. Together, they form a protect and purify combo. Blueberries neutralize free radicals, reduce inflammation in the tubules. Parsley increases urine output, delivers vitamin C and folate, gently flushes toxins. How to prepare it? Simple and sustainable. Add a small handful of fresh blueberries. Toss in a few sprigs of flat-leaf parsley. Place them in a large water bottle or glass jar filled with filtered water. Let it chill in the fridge for at least 2 hours so the nutrients can infuse into the water. Sip throughout the day, ideally between meals. Why between meals? Because that's when the kidneys function steadily without digestive stress, allowing your body to absorb gentle nutrients without irritation. This isn't a harsh remedy. It's a daily maintenance choice, cool, natural, easy to drink, and sustainable as part of a healthy lifestyle. With each glass, you're adding a soft layer of protection to your body's natural filtration system, reducing inflammation, aiding elimination, and doing it without putting strain on your kidneys. Next up, a traditional herbal tea now backed by modern science that's been shown to nearly cut the risk of dialysis in half. You may have tried it before, but likely not the right way or for the right purpose. Number 3, hibiscus tea. The vibrant brew that helps your kidneys filter blood more efficiently. You may have had this tea before without realizing it does far more for your kidneys than just quenching your thirst. Hibiscus, also known as roselle or red artichoke, doesn't just brighten your cup with its deep crimson hue. It contains compounds that can directly enhance your kidney's ability to filter blood, especially important if you're managing high blood pressure, diabetes, or chronic inflammation. Chemical structure equals real effects. Hibiscus tea contains organic acids, support metabolism and help regulate your body's internal pH flavonoids, reduce blood vessel inflammation. Anthocyanins, powerful antioxidants that protect kidney cells. A study published in the Journal of Renal Injury Prevention showed hibiscus extract reduced kidney damage markers by up to 47% in patients with early-stage kidney disease. How hibiscus tea addresses key issues in older adults. Mild vasodilation naturally lowers systolic blood pressure. Neutralizes free radicals right arrow, reduces oxidative stress in kidney vessels. Protects the kidney's epithelial layer right arrow, prevents damage from spreading through the filtration system. Light diuretic effect right arrow helps remove sodium and toxins without depleting potassium like many synthetic diuretics do. After age 60, factors like high blood pressure, diabetes, chronic inflammation make the kidneys more vulnerable than ever. Hibiscus isn't a cure, but it meaningfully supports the repair process. It helps the blood filtration system run more smoothly, with less strain. How to brew it right to get the full benefits. Use 1 tablespoon of dried hibiscus flowers. Steep in hot water for 10–15 minutes. The longer it steeps, the deeper the color and flavor. Optional. Add a slice of lemon or a touch of raw honey. Avoid refined sugar. Your kidneys don't need extra glucose load. When to drink it? 1–2 times daily. Ideally after meals when your kidneys are actively managing metabolism. Many older adults report that after a few weeks of regular use, they experience less swelling in the legs, see more stable blood pressure, sleep more deeply, waking less during the night. Now you know about a tea that boosts blood flow to your kidneys, reduces pressure from narrowed vessels, calms inflammation, and supports the regeneration of the delicate filters your kidneys rely on to clean your blood. Up next, a drink that doesn't just protect, but actually helps rebuild the kidney's microscopic structure, something most doctors never bring up in the exam room. Number 2, detox water with chlorella, deep cleansing and kidney tissue regeneration. If you've never heard of chlorella, you're not alone. This tiny green algae rarely makes it into mainstream health articles, but according to many nutrition experts and recent scientific studies, it may be one of the most powerful natural kidney regeneration aids out there. What is chlorella, and why is it important for kidney health? Chlorella is a single-celled green algae typically sold as soluble powder, nutritional supplement tablets. It's known for its ability to bind to and eliminate heavy metals, dangerous toxins like cadmium, lead, mercury. These metals silently build up in the kidneys over time and directly damage the filtering cells. A study published in Environmental Toxicology and Pharmacology showed that chlorella helped reduce cadmium buildup in the kidneys by up to 66% in individuals exposed to heavy metals. Why does this matter more as we age? If you've ever eaten canned or processed foods, used old aluminum or metal-coated cookware, taken prescription medication long-term, then your kidneys likely carry more toxic metals than you think. But chlorella isn't just a metal vacuum. It also provides chlorophyll, anti-inflammatory, and supports detoxification. Iron and magnesium help balance mineral levels. Bioactive peptides stimulate regeneration of kidney epithelial tissue. Together, chlorella has the potential to slow down fibrosis, scarring that causes nephrons to lose their filtering function, improve glomerular filtration rate (GFR), reduce proteinuria, an early sign of kidney dysfunction. If you've experienced unexplained fatigue, mild swelling in the feet or face, brain fog, or sluggish thinking, there's a good chance your kidneys are overwhelmed with toxins, and chlorella could be the missing piece. How to safely use chlorella at home. Mix a 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of chlorella powder into a large glass of filtered water. Drink it in the morning or early afternoon on an empty stomach. Follow up with another glass of water to help flush out the bound toxins. If using tablets, choose cracked cell wall chlorella for better absorption. Start with a low dose and gradually increase to avoid detox reactions like nausea, mild headaches, temporary fatigue. Chlorella isn't just about cleansing the system. It also plays a role in rebuilding the internal foundation of your kidneys, where each filtering cell has been quietly wearing down over the years. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. The number 1 drink on the list, simple, classic, yet the most effective way to protect and restore your kidneys naturally. Number 1, barley water. A natural kidney therapy almost no one talks about. You've heard of detox teas, green juices, even alkaline water. But there's one drink that's simple, old school, and scientifically proven to significantly support kidney function, especially in people over 60. That drink is barley water. Why is barley water so effective? Barley, a humble grain, packs a trio of nutrients that are highly beneficial for the kidneys. Beta-glucans, a fiber that helps eliminate toxins and stabilize blood sugar. Magnesium, a mineral that improves blood circulation and reduces calcification. Natural antioxidants, compounds that lower inflammation and protect kidney tissue. But here's the real kicker. Barley water doesn't just cleanse, it also helps prevent new kidney damage and repair existing damage. Scientific proof? Yes, and it's impressive. A study published in the International Journal of Green Pharmacy found that drinking barley water daily reduced oxalate levels by up to 62%, a major cause of kidney stones and urinary tract inflammation. That's not all. Many patients also reported slight reductions in creatinine levels, improved glomerular filtration rate, GFR, feeling noticeably lighter and better after just a few weeks. Why should older adults care? As you age, your kidneys gradually lose their ability to regulate key minerals like calcium, sodium, uric acid. What happens next? Swelling, kidney stones, high blood pressure, and eventually the risk of dialysis. Barley water helps by gently cleansing the kidneys, increasing urine output, reducing protein buildup and toxic accumulation. And the best part, it doesn't stress the kidneys like synthetic diuretics often do. How to make barley water at home. Rinse a half cup of whole barley. Boil with 3-4 cups of water for 30-40 minutes. Strain out the grains and let it cool. Optional add-ins. A slice of lemon boosts citrate to fight kidney stones. A pinch of cinnamon supports blood sugar levels. Drink 1-2 cups a day, ideally between meals. What many people over 60 have reported: clearer urine, less ankle swelling, improved digestion, mild drops in blood pressure. No meds, no harsh detoxes, just consistency and the right choice. This isn't just a drink. It's a safe, natural, evidence-based kidney recovery therapy. If there's one thing you should start drinking today, make it barley water. You've just discovered 8 powerful drinks that have been scientifically proven to cleanse the kidneys, restore their blood filtering function, and even help you avoid dialysis, all completely natural. These aren't just random suggestions. They're real tools to help you fight swelling, fatigue, and toxin buildup, the silent forces that push your kidneys to the brink. The best part is, you don't need a prescription or any complicated medical equipment. All it takes is simple ingredients and a small daily commitment to yourself. If you're over 60, now is the time to take proactive steps. Don't wait for the symptoms to become obvious. Don't wait until your lab results flash a red warning. You can start today with just one drink from this list and gradually build a kidney-supporting lifestyle that lasts. Your kidneys are stronger than you think, but they need the right support at the right time. Every sip you take is a deliberate choice. Every small change in your daily routine adds up to a big difference over time. And now you've got a clear plan in your hands to do it right and to do it effectively. Before you go, leave us a comment. Let us know where you're watching from, how old you are, and what you're currently doing to take care of your kidney health. We read and personally respond to every comment, and will recommend the most suitable drink for you based on your story. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the Elderly Way channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any future health guides. Because here at the Elderly Way, we don't just share advice. We're helping you live healthier, take control, and rewrite the journey of aging starting today.